Hi, everybody. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Shechkin, for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm basically here to share my story that just came out in New York Magazine at the beginning of the month. And it's a pretty amazing story. I feel very blessed. I struggled with fertility for quite a long time. I decided when I was 40 I was going to be a mom, and even as a physician, I had no idea of the struggle of the journey that I was about to embark on. And it was a long road and many aspects to the journey, but both suffered from multiple miscarriages until somebody found out that I had immunology issues, and then also suffered from silent endometriosis that nobody had diagnosed for a long time. And not until I corrected both of those problems was I able to even have my first child. So 6 miscarriages later, I finally became a mom, and it was a blessing. And then I decided to test faith again and decided I wanted to be a second mom, have a second child. And a couple of miscarriages later with we did something called PGD, which I know you guys are all familiar with. And when I was told about this PGD, I was basically told that it was, the way to go, and that was almost 100%. And most of my embryos that I put back were PGD tested. And I still suffered miscarriages with PGD normal embryos, and couldn't really understand. So we decided to go back and take a few more embryos and bank some embryos. And I was 44 at the time, and as we just learned about the quantity of normal oocytes at that age is very, very small. So we did something called embryo banking, and I basically just did cycle after cycle, and we were able to bank for 9 months, and we put together 18 day 5 embryos. And when we sent for PGD testing, every single one came back as abnormal. And luckily I was working with, I still work with Dr. Braverman at the time, who works very closely with Dr. Gleicher. And he said to me, I bet you these are not, there's some of them in here that are normal. And I said, well, how do you know? That's crazy. He said, it's not 100%. We've had a couple of cases that we've actually put back abnormal embryos, and they've actually gone full term and become, and are normal embryos. So this was shocking to me, because most of the fertility places, when a PGD test comes back as abnormal, most fertility places throw away the embryo. It's an automatic response to throw away the embryo. Several places that I was at, Columbia, Cornell, NYU, just multiple fertility places, that's the protocol, is to throw away the embryo. But the place I was at the time, New Hope Fertility, they did not throw their embryos away. So I was able to go back and say, okay, let's give it a try. And we had a long talk about what the risks were and what I was facing. And really, I just did not think about it. I just kind of went and did it, and really had no clue that it would even take. I was really, this is not going to take, so let's just do it. And so let's do it so I can move on to the next step, whatever it is. And I got pregnant, and we put 4 abnormal embryos back in, PGD tested abnormal embryos back in, and I got pregnant, and I was very scared. I had no idea, how this was going to be, how could I, make certain decisions, or what I was going to do. And finally, at 12 weeks, we did a CVS, and it was a normal girl. And I have a 20-month-old daughter from an abnormal embryo that was PGD tested that would have never been here had it not been for people like Dr. Gleicher and Dr. Braverman and people who think out of the box that this PGD testing is really not 100%. And the story that they did in the New York Magazine was about all this, that women have choices. And, and it's almost criminal that how many embryos have been thrown away that are really normal. And I would have never known. Nobody ever talked about it. It was always PGD, 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 because it increases the numbers at the fertility centers. And that's my take. So I think there is a role for it, but I think that women have choices and they need to be educated. And they need to know that this testing is not 100%, and to not throw their embryos away, and maybe before they move on to their next step, to really take a look at what other options that they do have. So that's my story, and so it's been quite a journey. But if I can help other people, that's why I put it out there. If I can help other women, then that's what I went through it for. So thank you.